Good afternoon. I wanted to put you guys up a quick video with an outline for Chapter 10 for torts. It covers strict liability, which includes animals and abnormally dangerous conditions and activities. Strict liability is imposed regardless of fault, so plaintiffs often have other options for tort suits, but those options are usually more complicated. So like an intentional tort, for example, requires that the plaintiff show intent on the part of the defendant. Negligence requires the usual elements for the plaintiff to prove: a breach of the duty of care. Okay? So there are three areas of strict liability, and for the reasons we just discussed, it is often easier for a plaintiff, more advantageous, if they can bring their claim under a strict liability suit. So the three main areas for strict liability include liability for animals, abnormally dangerous conditions or activities, and product liability. For product liability claims, we divide those into three types of defective products. Those are products with manufacturing defects, design defects, or warning defects. Okay. So we'll look at each of those three areas of strict liability. First off, animals. It's important to distinguish what type of animal caused the harm. If it's a wild animal, they are going to be held strictly liable. That includes the owner or the caretaker of a wild animal. The way that you determine if an animal is wild is if it's wild in its natural state. So it's not sufficient to say, well, it's a trained bear or a trained tiger. Okay. If it's wild in its natural state, it's a wild animal. Okay. Also included for strict liability for animals are pets or domesticated animals like cats, dogs, horses that have known propensities to cause harm. Okay. It is if you know your dog bites people or chases bicyclists and tries to attack them, then he has a known propensity. Okay. So if he causes that type of harm, the owner is going to be strictly liable. The next type of strict liability claims involve dangerous conditions and activities. These include things like explosives, blasting, making poisons, storing or transporting toxic substances, or operating things like nuclear power plants. Okay. There are some factors for determining if a condition or activity is abnormally dangerous. You can find that, it's from the Restatement Second of Torts on page 239 of your textbook. Again, the plaintiff has some other options for filing besides... Sorry, a little traffic up here. The plaintiff has some other options for filing a suit, potentially a trespass to land suit, nuisance, wrongful death potentially if the plaintiff was killed, or a negligence suit. But these require more of the plaintiff in order to win the suit. Strict liability only requires that the plaintiff show that the defendant was responsible for creating the dangerous condition or activity, okay, and that the plaintiff was harmed. You don't have to show negligence, you don't have to show intent. Okay. Third category of strict liability suits involves product liability. Plaintiffs for this are not only the buyers of the products, but anyone potentially who uses the product. Could be somebody who rents the product. Could be somebody who rebuys the product from another user. Okay. Types of product liability, we discussed this briefly above, but manufacturing defects, design defects, and warning defects. So manufacturing defect basically involves some mistake or error in the manufacturing process. So somehow the product wasn't assembled correctly, or it wasn't made to specifications. Okay. Maybe there's a flaw in the material. Secondly, you have design defects. That is, the product was manufactured correctly. There's no mistake in assembly, but the design was poor to start with. So it was made the way it was designed, but the design itself was bad. Lastly, a warning defect. That is, the product is not safe for the user because either the instructions are poor or it fails to give adequate warning about some danger with the product. Some issues with product liability to look at in your text, things like anti-tamper packaging or child-safe packaging. Okay. Take a look at the product's intended use and foreseeable misuse. Both of those are things that the manufacturer should be responsible for. Okay. You might want to take an interesting look at the FDA's defective standards for food products in your textbook. You may be surprised or appalled to learn exactly how many rodent hairs or insects are allowed to be in your various forms of food, including broccoli and chocolate. All right, lastly, some more, hold on. My apologies, it's loud motorcycle weather. So for product liability, there are five basic tort options for the plaintiff here. Again, they can always file a negligence claim, a misrepresentation claim, and file a claim on breach of express warranty or breach of implied warranty. Those are covered well in your textbook. Make sure that you take a look at them. Okay. And finally, strict liability. Okay. Again, if a plaintiff can make a strict liability claim, they have a lot fewer obstacles to overcome. That's the advantage. Okay. Other options still available if they don't meet the requirements for strict liability. So for strict liability for product liability, they have to show that there's a product, that the product was defective, either in its manufacture, its design, or its warning, and that it's unreasonably dangerous. Most courts determine if a product is unreasonably dangerous by using the ordinary consumer test. Okay. There is another standard that looks at the risk benefits. Plaintiff may be a buyer, a user, even a bystander that's harmed by the product. Okay. That's it. That's chapter 10. I'll post you guys another video as soon as I get one ready.